G'day everybody and welcome to Rolling Conversations this afternoon. We hope your week has started well, wherever you're watching from around New South Wales and the ACT or further afield. And what a important conversation today with a Paralympian, a pioneer, unfortunately a Manly supporter, but a giant of wheelchair sports. Jeff Wiseman, welcome to Rolling Conversations.
Thanks, Mick. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Jeff. You really are such a huge figure in our history. So love to have a yarn to you about your history. Of course, we'll talk about the Oz Day, which you and Peter Trotter were the founders of, but there's much more to your story. So we want to have a yarn about that. If you're watching online, please send your questions in and your comments, and we'll get as many of those up on screen as we can. So, Jeff, I wonder whether we might start with where you grew up. You know, for those who don't know your backstory, where was home as a young man for you, Jeff?
I'm just going to answer the Rooster. Hi, Rooster.
There he is.
G'day, mate. Yes, where did I grow up? I was born at Crown Street Women's Hospital in the city, but my family lived at the Northern Beaches at Balgowlah. And for the first 11 years, I lived in Balgowlah. And then after my grandfather died, my mum and dad moved to Manly, and he used to look after a boarding house. Then mum and dad bought the boarding house, and I lived in Manly right up till I eventually got married and moved out to Dee Why, where I'm still out today.
Yeah, great. And what role did sport play as a young bloke for you, Jeff? What sports were you into as a younger man in Manly?
What sort of sports?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you're just breaking up occasionally, and that's why I had to re-ask the question. Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, just interested in what sort of sports you were into as a young bloke. What sports did you play?
The very first sport that I was doing was hockey, and I got hit with a stick a few times, and I didn't like it. So I gave that away. And I then sort of went into football. Obviously school had football, rugby league. And I was pretty fast. I was a very quick young guy. So I ended up playing centres and winging for probably most of my career. Then when we moved to Manly, I was lucky enough to be picked in 3 local representative sides for Manly, Warringah, a very young representative.
I'm sorry to hear that.
In those days, they used to go away for a weekend. You used to go to Lithgow. And when you're sort of, 10, 11, 12, Lithgow was a long way to go. It's only 2 hours up the road nowadays. But those days it was, a train trip and pretty exciting for a young bloke. Then when I moved to Manly, we lived right opposite Manly Oval and Sydney Road, and I actually did a lot of running and mucking around over there. And a local guy sort of said, join the local rugby union team. So basically on Saturday mornings I'd play union, and Saturday afternoon I'd play league. So I was pretty involved with that sort of thing. As I say, very quick, good at running. Very, very quick, very, very fast. And when I went to high school, it was disappointing because Balgowlah Boys High, where Richard Court-Dukes went to as well, he was a couple of years behind me. They had a rugby union side, but they didn't have a rugby league side.
Right.
And I was a bit annoyed about that, and I didn't really want to get into the rugby union full time. And when they had the surf carnival, the swimming carnival, I put my name down for the diving, and I thought, I'll have a go at the diving because I used to dive off the pier at Manly, and they had the baths had an old wooden springboard. Anyway, I did a couple of dives, and I wasn't very good, but I still won the competition.
Nice.
Anyway, my tech drawing teacher sort of encouraged me and said, you've got potential. Why don't you get some diving lessons? So mum and dad sort of got in touch with an Olympian, a bloke called Jack Barnett, and he had the Jack Barnett Diving Academy. So I joined that. And then basically every Saturday and Sunday morning in summer, the diving was at Ryde Olympic Pool. But unfortunately, the towers are now been demolished. They're gone. And then in winter, they used to do what they called sand diving. So you dive off a springboard with a harness around you, and then you'd sort of dive off the springboard and obviously land on your feet in the sand, or if it was a 1.5, he'd hold you back and then lower you down so you didn't crash into the sand.
Yeah, right.
So I did that basically up until the time I had my accident. So it was 18, and I won a couple of New South Wales junior diving championships. In the winter months, we did a lot of trampolining, and I was always second to a bloke. His name was Billy Popowinko.
Great name, Billy Popowinko. If Billy Popowinko is watching, send us a message. Wow.
He'd probably remember me. And I could never beat him. I was always second to him. He was just a brilliant trampoliner, for a young guy. Then, night times, I did a bit of judo. I like doing judo. So I did a lot of things in sport. And then when I started working, I got a motorbike to go to and from work. And I really sort of got into the motorbike side of things. And then I ended up joining a motorcycle club, not a gang, a club. Okay. Willoughby District Motorcycle Club. And I kind of got into the whole structure of that and the racing side of it. And then I used to sign my old man's signature because I was under 18. You weren't allowed to race until you were over 18. So I used to forge my old man's signature so I could get it. And I started racing. I really enjoyed that. But one of the things I learnt out of the motorbike era was that after my accident and I got involved with wheelchair sports, I realised there wasn't a structure in wheelchair sports like there was with the motorcycle club. To put an event on, you had to have obviously a track to start with, and you had to have a lot of volunteers, for flag marshals and pit crews and all that sort of thing. And I kind of learnt all that from the motorcycle days. And then when I got into wheelchair sports, it was very ad hoc. And Kevin Betts was just doing heaps of, a mountain of work all by himself. And, I thought that there was an opportunity for the rest of us in wheelchairs that were doing the sport to do everyone could do a little bit to take the load off Kevin.
So, Jeff, am I right in saying you did your rehab at Mount Wilga then? Is that right? And that's how you came across Kevin Betts?
Yes, in late 69, when they discharged me from hospital, because my employer, the Navy, said to me, we'd like to give you a chance to start back at the dockyards, but we're going to want to make sure that you can actually, handle the work. So they sent me to Mount Wilga Rehabilitation Centre, which was a lot different to what it is now. It's more of a private hospital rehab, where in those days it wasn't a hospital, it was just a rehab centre. And then I was there from October through to February. And that's where I met Kevin Betts and his wife, Mari. And, he sort of convinced me. He said, look, why don't you come along, try some wheelchair sports and meet the people. And I went. They used to have basketball on Tuesday night. They used to call it bash and barge, because there was no real rules. We all just went crazy and, a bit like the rugby players nowadays, And that was at Homebush. And that was kind of interesting. I kind of got into it for about 6 months. And then there was a national games in Melbourne, and I went down part of that team. But I don't think I was ready for that. I probably physically wasn't, because when I got out of hospital, I probably weighed about 45 kilos. I was skin and bone. And then it took me a while to actually build up its strength over a period. And that first 12 months, 18 months, I really wasn't ready for sport, wheelchair sports.
So Kevin Betts is obviously a very famous name in our history, and there's Kevin Betts Stadium at Mount Druitt, which we still run. And of course, you were a huge part of the group alongside Richard Corjukes and many other of our pioneers in establishing that stadium. Can you tell us about Kevin Betts? What sort of a man was he for those of us who never got that chance to meet him?
Very passionate man, a devout Catholic. We went away many times, and no matter where he was within Australia, overseas, he always made sure that he went to Mass on Sunday at some stage. And even, going to Stoke Mandeville those years ago, he actually organised an actual priest to come out and do Mass for all the athletes, no matter what country you were from, He was, very passionate about his family. He kept them very private. He sort of didn't bring them along to the sport. Like, his sporting interests and his family interests were two, defined, paths. But, and he was very well educated. I remember a meeting at North Shore Hospital one night. We were part of our sports association in those days, was part of the Paraplegic and Quadriplegic Association, which Kevin and I broke away from, Anyway, one of these particular meetings, I said, no, I said such and such, Kevin. And Kevin said, no, you didn't. You said such and I said, no, you're wrong, Kevin. Anyway, the next meeting, Kevin came with the minutes, and exactly what Kevin said, I said was right, and I was wrong. So, he had an incredible good memory for things as well. And he could, one trip, we went to Singapore once in the early 70s, and we were all sitting up the back of the plane. And because in those days you could smoke on a plane. Anyway, Kevin's up the back with all the smokers. Anyway, 9 hours later, the plane sort of coming into land, and Kevin came and sat next to me. And I said, who was that bloke you're talking to, Kevin? And he said, I don't know, some German. And I said, can you speak German? And he said, no. And I said, he can speak English. And I said, no. But they had a conversation for 9 hours, and they both couldn't speak these other languages.
There you go.
That's the sort of guy Kevin could relate to anybody, anywhere, at any time.
Yeah, wow.
A fantastic man.
Oh, thank you for that. Because as I say, those of us that are new to the wheelchair sports community hear the name and we hear the legend of Kevin Betts, but we actually haven't heard much about him as an individual. You've probably seen Jerry Houston's message there.
Good day, Jerry. Go back to the push-a-thon, and you said you saw Chris Sparks running around without a T-shirt on. Well, two of the funniest things that ever happened at that push-a-thon, Jerry and Chris used to get there and do a Roy and HG impersonation, and they were bloody funny.
Yeah, right.
Good day, Jerry.
So that's Jerry saying good day, and so he's what did he say? He was too soft for wheelchair track and road, so he took up basketball. And then Richard Corjukes, tell us about your experiences at Maryland's Oval Lidcombe Hospital, mate.
Yes, well, after we were kicked out of the drill hall at Homebush, that was an army drill hall, and Kevin found I don't know, it was like was as big as a basketball area. I think it was an old dining room or something at Lidcombe Hospital. And we moved everything to the basketball courts, snooker table tennis table. We moved everything over there. Every Tuesday night we used to have the Bass and Barge over there. Unfortunately, it was right next door to the boilers to heat the hospital. And the boilers were obviously fired by coal. So when you left, most of the windows were broken in that place. So all the coal dust came in. So when you sort of went home after a game of basketball, you were black from the coal. So not as good as the Kevin Betts Stadium nowadays. It's pristine conditions compared to what we had to go through.
Yeah. Hey, and was Maryland's Oval where the push-a-thon happened that I think Richard was very influential in and you were all a big part of? Is that right?
The Maryland's Oval.
Yeah. Is that where you guys had the push-a-thon?
That's correct. Yes.
So earlier, there was maybe 8 or 9 of those, and There looks like some wild nights there, Jeff. There was lots of pushing, but there was a few cans of Fosters and those sorts of things disposed of as well, I reckon.
Oh, it was mandatory. Yeah, you had to have a good drink and have a good time. No, it was, some took it very seriously, and some, because I was pretty fit in those days, and I'd probably do 40 or 50 laps and then have a couple of hours off and then do another 40 or 50 laps. A lot of people, they just sort of plugged away all night, and we had lots of what do you call it, 44-gallon drums because it was always pretty cold out there, and a lot of the locals came and got involved from around the local area. And on a couple of times, they the Marylands, I think it was Marylands Council, they had like a circus thing there, with carnival rides and whatever. And that really helped us, because then the people came down for the carnival, then they came over to see what we were doing, and then we were able to flog them some lottery, raffle tickets or a sausage sizzle or something. So we sort of ripped into them as well. But no, it was a great time, great fun time, and everyone enjoyed it.
I just think it's a ripper of an idea, and keeping in the back of my mind that when we get out of this situation and we can roll again and we can get together again, maybe a great idea. Maybe we get a push-a-thon back and get the whole community around it again and have another roll. Yeah,
I just saw Jerry said I went faster with a few beers. Well, good alcohol, 100% alcohol makes any car go faster.
Well said. Hey, we've got a message here, Jeff, from Shannon Bates. G'day, Jeff. I still have my first racing wheelchair. It's hanging on the wall.
Yes, I made a lot of racing wheelchairs in the early days, and that was one of the things with Peter Trotter and I. We not only sort of got racing together and do things, but in those days the rules and regulations for wheelchairs were pretty hard to live by. And Peter and I was in the early 80s, going up to 84 when Peter won his gold medals and silver medals. I used to sort of build and design my own wheelchairs, and Peter Trotter's father-in-law was very good at bike racing, and he was very good at designing and doing things. And we were actually building things and doing things, and then we didn't know whether what we did that week was a benefit or not. So Peter and I then came to an agreement. We'd say, right, if you've got an idea and you're going to change, don't you do anything this week. And we had a certain spot in Centennial Park that we'd sort of hold hands and then let coast down the hill and see who got to the bottom first. And whoever got there first realised that, yes, those improvements were better this week than last week. So,
you're right.
And it kind of worked, because we then learnt to bounce our ideas off each other to make the chairs a bit quicker. And then obviously when Peter and I started to win races and do well, everybody wanted the same product that we had. So I made quite a few chairs. The very first chair for Shannon Bates, Christy Dawes, Skelton Dawes. I made her first chair, or maybe 2 chairs, maybe. So a lot of the young athletes sort of were buying products off us because we were learning that way.
With some wonderful histories there. So what's the Rooster got here? What achievement in your life are you most proud of, other than marrying your lovely wife?
He's a nice young bloke, Rooster, isn't he?
Yeah.
What achievement in your life are you most proud of? Boy, I really don't. Believe it or not, going back to work after my accident and being able to work in an environment that was, it wasn't a sheltered workshop. It was a domain of hard old men, and a certain percentage didn't want me there because I was in a wheelchair, and they used to say it's not a sheltered workshop. And I had to kind of prove to the management and the people around me that the work I was doing, if I was sick or had a day off, somebody else had to do that job. And that's what happened. So to Rooster, I guess actually going back to work and proving that I could mix it in an environment like that. And it wasn't a very good environment. It wasn't set up for wheelchairs. There was no toilets that would suit me. There wasn't any ramps anywhere, or, whatever. And it wasn't until probably 15 years after I was working there in a wheelchair that the general manager, I got to know him quite well. And then he said, "What would you like to improve your conditions at Garden Island?" And I said, "A nice toilet would be really good." And, to work in that environment for so long and under those conditions, I think that's one of my achievements, because I proved to myself that I could do it.
A beautiful reflection, Jeff. Thank you. I mean, I guess we're all sitting here thinking, alongside Peter Trotter, the creation of the Oz Day would have been right up there. But to hear you talk about, getting back to work and in that men's environment and holding your own and creating a career, I think that's a remarkable story. Thank you.
Yeah, what Rooster just wrote there then was what personal achievement. I think he wrote, didn't he? What personal achievement?
Yep.
So I can put that down to a personal achievement. I think the Oz Day, to me, it wasn't a personal achievement. It was an achievement that I wanted to do for other people. I didn't get as much out of wheelchair sport as I would have liked. I would have liked to have had a gold medal or a silver medal. That didn't happen. Maybe I just wasn't quite good enough. I don't know. But I think the measure of a person is what they can put back into a sport or an adventure. And if you put back more than you get out, then I think you're a better person for it.
Yeah, well said, Jeff. Now, it's remiss of us not to talk about the Oz Day then, because it's one of the things you're known for in our community alongside Peter. Can you tell us where did the idea come from for the Oz Day? And those watching that may not know the story, of course, the Oz Day is our great wheelchair road race on Australia Day each year, started in 1990 in Centennial Park, still going strong today. But where did the idea come from, Jeff, originally for this great race?
Well, I started going overseas in early 70s and had a break for a while. Then late 70s, I started again. And then the first trip to Stoke Mandeville was 79. I missed out on the 80 Paralympics. That's always a bit of annoyance to me. Too much political infighting then. And early 80s, Peter and I, we were sort of bouncing off each other, as in building wheelchairs, pushing each other to the limit. I said to Peter, the only way is for us to improve, we've got to go overseas. So we did. We started going overseas, went to Stoke Mandeville again. And then the early, about 83, we both went to America and did some road racing there. 84 was the Paralympics, so they were back in England. And then 85, 86, Peter and I did a lot of travelling through the States. We went over there and basically based ourselves for a month or two. We did races like the one was called the Kaiser Roll. That was up at Minneapolis near the Canadian border. Then we went down to Atlanta for the Peachtree race, and Kurt Fernley and Louise and Christy Wood all know that one. It's a huge race, and they actually hold that on the 4th of July, American Independence Day. Then we came back to Australia, and about 75, 76, we did that. And about 86, we used to do our training every Saturday morning in Centennial Park. And we had our cup of tea afterwards, and I said to Peter, we'd only just got back from the States, I said, we've got to have a race like the Peachtree. And he said, why? And I said, well, all those best athletes are there. Now, if we can have something like that, it costs a lot of money to go over there. It's costing us a lot of young athletes haven't got that money, haven't got that chance for the exposure. The only way we can give them all that exposure and make the athletes better in this country is if we can have something similar here. Then Peter then said, well, okay, that sounds pretty good. What day will we have it on? And I said, well, let's do the same as they've done it. Theirs is on the 4th of July, American Independence Day. Let's have it on Australia Day. Then Peter said, anything to do with your birthday? And I said, oh, just happened to be lucky it is I wanted to have a race here that the younger athletes could learn off and have that opportunity to see the world's best and race against the world's best at an affordable cost. And you've only got to look at the athletes that have come out of the Ausday. Kurt Fernley, Louise Savage, Jeff Trappett, some of them, Christy Skelton. They all had their first exposure to international racing through the Ausday 10K. So it is a big achievement, but I don't take it as a personal achievement. I take it as an achievement that both Peter and I might have thought of the idea. Peter worked very hard. He was a marketing manager, so he used his skills there to encourage Qantas and other people. Richard Corjukes was the president at the time. We had to convince him and the other board members. So I don't take it as a personal achievement. I take it as an achievement of the members of the Association of Wheelchair Sports.
Mm. And so it's just, as I mentioned earlier, it's still going strong today, Jeff. What are some of the memorable moments for you with regard to the Ausday? You know, are there any great races or great athletes, I suppose, that come to mind?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's so many good athletes. Fabian Blackman, one of our quadriplegic athletes, is retired now. Fantastic. Yeah, the efforts he used to put in. A young guy we'd never heard of is Paul Wiggins from Tasmania. And this young guy came to Sydney about, I think, the third, fourth year. And I was training in Centennial Park with him. And, I was pretty fit. And this guy just blew me away. And I thought, where's this guy come from? And he went on to win multiple races through America and Europe. A fantastic athlete, just came out of the blue. As you say, Louise and Kurt and all the rest. We've had some fantastic athletes. I think a very memorable one was a few years ago. Kurt was beaten by, was it David Weir, the English bloke? Mm-hmm. And it was a bit of a grudge match or something. But, what a fantastic race. The two of them pushed each other to the limits, and a lot of other races, guys have got out the front and won quite easily. But I think that one between David and Kurt stands out in my memory as an absolute classic, Ausday.
Mm. Hey, and speaking of Kurt, Jeff, he credits his dad sitting him down in front of the TV on Australia Day and watching this race for the first time as the spark for his career. That must make you incredibly proud to think that what you and Peter created, spawned the career of Kurt Fernley and others. What a legacy.
Yeah, I had a talk to Kurt a few years ago after the Ausday, and he said, yes, he saw it on TV and he said, I'm going to do that race. And I said to him, if you hadn't have seen that race, do you think you would have been here today anyway? Did that race really, or you still would have been motivated enough to be here? And he said, I don't know. He said, I can't answer that, and I can't answer it either. But we do know one thing, the race did get in there, and I'm pretty happy about that and pretty proud about it as well. We've gave him a great opportunity to exploit his great talents and ability.
Yeah, indeed. How many days did you do, Jeff, and when did you finish up?
I basically started in 1970
yeah.
and started doing fun runs and road races and whatever. And then I did my last Ausday 2003. So it's about, 14 years ago, whatever. So happily retired.
And you're looking forward to the Paralympics. So are there any events in particular you're going to be watching in Tokyo in a couple of weeks?
Everything that, whatever they put on, I'll watch, but obviously I'm close to track racing. The shorter ones are very good, but I like the tactics and the longer ones. You can look, 5 and 10,000 metres, 1,500 metres. They're all, they're great to watch. And when you've been in there and seen it and been amongst it all, you can see the tactics that work and don't work, and the ones that make silly mistakes like I did. And you say, oh, yeah, fair enough. But no, I'll be watching it as much as I can.
Yeah, great. Jeff, we've just about run out of time, but it's just been such a pleasure to talk to you. And one of the things that I've seen in my time with wheelchair sports over the last few years is it's not just the relationship that you have with the huge names in our sport, you know, Louise and Kurt and Christy and Angie and Jake and, you know, the superstars of our sport, but the relationship that you have with our juniors, you know, with someone like Rooster or Cormac or Sarah and these emerging young people. It strikes me that the young people in our community are very important to you.
I'm sorry, I lost you at the last bit. You broke up.
That's okay. I was just saying it strikes me that it feels like to me the young people in our community are really important to you, to see young people get a start. Absolutely.
Yeah, as I said, those early years with me in wheelchair racing, unfortunately, there was a small group that was an inner clique. And I felt that when I came into sport, I wasn't part of that group and I was excluded. And that kind of hurt me because I was learning how to be a disabled person and then also learning to take on sport and whatever. And then I always thought, no, I'm going to make sure that everybody, gets a fair shake, which I didn't get when I first came into it. And that's why as I said, I'm very happy to start the race. Very happy with the changes I made to wheelchair sports to make it what it is today. I changed the constitution. We had our own constitution. I changed that. I structured wheelchair sports so it became a full-time instead of ad hoc like it was originally. So all these things I did, not for me. I did it for the athletes like myself that were kind of excluded originally. But we've had some really great people over the years, like in Errol Hyde and Jerry and Chris and Richard. Fantastic people. All the volunteers, Linda Ross, Craig Jarvis, Godfrey Roberts, Yvonne Talbot, Bob Talbot, it's not just me. It's all these people that have made wheelchair sports what it is today.
Yeah, well said. Well, there's a message there from Craig Jarvis. Great chat today. And g'day, Jeff.
G'day, Craig.
So we say g'day to Craig. He follows the Bunnies, I think. He's
unfortunately.
He's a Roosters man, so sorry to hear that. And another message from Shannon. Thanks for creating so many opportunities for the athletes of today. You're a true legend. So some beautiful messages, Jeff. Thank you for being part of Rolling Conversations and for honouring us, really, with telling these wonderful old stories. Because we can't know where we're going unless we know where we've been, and you're a huge part of that history. So thanks very much for being a part of this afternoon's conversation.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for being
a
part of it. And we'll see you next week for Rolling Conversations. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Bye.